Your person is afraid. More afraid than they have ever admitted to anyone, more afraid than they have ever dared to whisper even in the quietest corner of their own mind. This is not a small, manageable fear that passes with the morning light. This is the kind of fear that settles into the bones, that makes the air feel heavier before a single word is spoken, that turns an ordinary Tuesday into something that must simply be survived. Every single day, they wake up with a weight pressing down on their chest before they have even fully opened their eyes, before the world has had a chance to greet them, before anything has gone wrong. They lie there in those first slow seconds of consciousness wondering if today will be the day everything they feared finally becomes real. They wonder if someone else is slowly, quietly, almost invisibly taking your attention away from them. Your heart, your energy, your love, the warmth that once made them feel like the most important person in any room you entered together. They try to act normal. They really do. You would be surprised, perhaps even heartbroken, by how hard they work every single day just to appear ordinary. They try to smile at the right moments. They try to carry their voice with steadiness even when something inside is cracking. They try to fill the silences with easy conversation, to move through the hours the way a person moves through hours when they have nothing to hide and nothing to fear. But deep inside, in that private place where no performance is possible and no pretending holds, they are silently breaking apart. You may not see it yet. That is almost the most painful part of all, because they have become so careful about making sure you do not see it. Your absence, your distance, your silence, these things have created a storm inside their soul that grows louder in all the moments when everything else around them goes quiet. They are falling into depression because they feel like they are losing the one person who ever made them feel truly alive. That person is you. Not a version of you. Not a distant memory of you. You, specifically and completely. You must understand something important about this fear. It did not arrive one morning fully formed. It was not born from a single moment or a single conversation. It grew the way certain wounds grow, slowly, quietly, in the dark, long before anyone notices the damage. It grew from every delayed reply that made them stare at their screen wondering what they had done wrong. It grew from every cold moment when you were physically present but emotionally somewhere else entirely. It grew from every time you seemed distracted when they were speaking, every time your energy moved toward something or someone else while they sat there silently aching for even a fraction of your attention. Each of those moments left a mark they did not fully understand at the time. It was only later, lying awake in the dark long after you had moved on to other thoughts, that they began to feel the accumulation of all those marks pressing down on them at once. They started comparing themselves to everyone around you. That is one of the cruelest things that fear does to a loving heart. It turns an otherwise confident person into someone who measures themselves against invisible competitors. They began asking themselves painful questions in the late hours when honesty becomes impossible to escape. What if I am not enough for you anymore? What if someone else understands you better, laughs with you more easily, holds your interest in ways I cannot? What if I am already losing you and I simply have not been told yet? What if I lose you forever, and I look back at all the quiet warning signs I was too frightened to address directly? These questions became poison inside their mind. Not the dramatic kind of poison that announces itself loudly, but the slow kind that works without you noticing, that alters things gradually. Until one day you look inside yourself and barely recognize what you find. They stopped sleeping peacefully. Even when exhaustion finally pulls them under, their heart keeps its own restless schedule, racing through fears that daylight almost manages to silence. They imagine another person stepping into the space they once occupied in your life without question, without competition, without anxiety. They imagine you smiling at someone else the way you used to smile at them, that specific smile they have memorized across every variation and context, the one that once made them feel like they were standing at the center of something good. And every time that image appears behind their closed eyes, something inside them collapses all over again. You may think they are being dramatic. That thought has probably crossed your mind, gently or otherwise. You may believe they are overthinking, spiraling, turning small things into catastrophes that only exist in the architecture of their own anxiety. But the truth is simply this: they love you more deeply than they know how to carry. The love itself is not the problem. The love is real and enormous and entirely without exaggeration. What happened is that this love, unguarded and uncontained, turned into fear the moment they began to feel its security slipping. Love becomes fear when it has nowhere safe to land. And right now, they are not sure where to land. There are moments when they stare at old photographs of you together and feel something between tenderness and grief, because the version of you in those photographs felt uncomplicated in a way that the present does not. They replay old conversations in their mind with an attention to detail that would astonish you. They search your words for hidden meanings, for the small shifts in tone that might reveal something you have not said directly. They notice the difference between the way you used to speak to them and the way you speak to them now, and even when those differences are tiny, barely measurable, they register them the way a person registers a change in weather before a storm. The body knows before the mind is ready to admit what it knows. And because they are terrified, they have started losing themselves in ways they did not anticipate and cannot fully control. Their energy is lower than it used to be. The lightness they once carried so naturally has become something they have to manufacture with effort. Their smile arrives a fraction of a second later than it once did, as though it must travel further to reach the surface. They feel emotionally exhausted in a bone, deep way that a good night of sleep cannot touch, because this exhaustion is not physical. It is the exhaustion that comes from carrying fear without release, from loving someone intensely while simultaneously being terrified of what that love exposes you to. Some days they cannot even explain why they feel so hollow, so scraped clean of the lightness that once came easily. It is because their soul feels unsafe without the reassurance that your love is still present and still theirs. You became their emotional home, and now they are living with the constant, grinding fear that someone else is being invited in through the door they thought was only theirs. What you may not know is that there are nights when they cry without anyone to witness it. Nights when they sit in the particular stillness of a house that has gone quiet and fight thoughts that keep returning no matter how many times they are pushed away. They remind themselves to be rational. They tell themselves not to give in to fear. They search for reasons to feel safe. But the fear always returns, and when it returns it comes back stronger than before, as though it grew in the time it was briefly held at bay. Depression has been wrapping around them like a slow tide, not the kind of sadness that makes itself known dramatically, but the kind that simply removes color and warmth gradually until one day the world looks different and you cannot remember exactly when the change began. They miss the version of you that made them feel chosen without question or condition. They miss the quality of your attention when it was fully, undistractedly theirs. They miss your warmth on an ordinary day when nothing particular was happening and your warmth came anyway, simply because you were present with them. They miss feeling important not in a grand or ceremonial way, but in the quiet everyday way that means someone is thinking of you, choosing you, returning to you. Most of all, more than anything they could name if asked directly, they miss feeling secure inside your love. That security is what is gone. And without it, everything else they feel has become unstable. Right now, they are emotionally drowning while presenting a surface that looks calm and functional to everyone who sees them. The people in their life move around them and see someone who is managing, who is keeping up, who is fine. But the inside and the outside no longer match. Inside, there is a person who feels emotionally adrift in a way they cannot explain without sounding like too much, without risking the vulnerability of naming the fear out loud and having it heard as weakness or neediness or something that will only create more distance between you. The saddest part may be this: they no longer know how to ask for what they need from you. They are scared that expressing the full weight of what they feel will push you further away, so they carry it silently. They overthink in the privacy of their own mind. They wait for signs from you the way someone waits for weather to change. They hope that you will notice, that something in your perception will shift and land on exactly what they have been feeling without them having to expose it directly. They hope that love will make you see what words are too frightening to say. And sometimes, when the fear becomes particularly heavy, they pull away from you. Not because they stopped loving you. That is the precise opposite of what their withdrawal means. They pull away because they are trying to protect themselves from being hurt more than they already have been, because approaching you with an open heart feels dangerous when that heart is already this bruised. Depression does this to people. Fear does this to people. It turns the person most in need of closeness into someone who behaves as though they are choosing distance, and the misunderstanding that creates can deepen the very wound it was meant to protect. You have become the emotional center of their world. That is not a small thing. That is not something that happened by accident or without significance. It happened because of who you are to them, because of how your presence shaped something in them that could not be unshapen. Which is exactly why this situation carries the particular danger it does. When the center of someone's emotional world becomes uncertain, the entire structure of how they feel safe becomes uncertain along with it. There is something they believe, perhaps irrationally but with complete sincerity, about a third party. Maybe it is someone in your life whose name they have thought about too carefully. Maybe it is someone who appears to offer you something they fear they cannot offer. Maybe it is simply the abstract, nameless fear that someone more suited, more interesting, more uncomplicated could appear and take what they have slowly built with you. Whatever shape this fear takes in their mind, it has consumed their thinking more than they would ever admit to your face. Every moment your attention moves elsewhere, something inside them panics quietly. Every time you seem emotionally unavailable, they experience it as a small abandonment even if you intended nothing of the kind. And yet, after all of this, they still love you with a depth that has not diminished. That is what makes this heartbreaking in a very specific way. They are not feeling any of this because they resent you. They are not reaching this level of emotional exhaustion because they want to control you or manipulate the situation. They are here, in this pain, because your love matters to them beyond their own pride, beyond their own comfort, beyond the self-protection that a less loving person might choose instead. The jealousy you may have noticed, the emotional reactivity, the oversensitivity to things that once would have passed easily, none of that is the true story. The true story is underneath, and it is the story of a soul that does not want to be replaced, that cannot bear the thought of becoming secondary to someone who matters so deeply. They need reassurance more urgently than they need perfection from you. They need to know that they still occupy the place in your heart they believed they had, that the ground beneath that belief has not shifted without their knowledge. They feel emotionally unsafe in a way they cannot entirely articulate. They feel like they are standing at the edge of losing everything that made them feel whole. And the depression grows heavier not because something terrible has definitely happened, but because they cannot shake the terror that it might, and they feel powerless to stop it. You have no idea, perhaps you truly do not, how badly they want you to choose them. To say with your actions and your attention and your words that nobody else compares to what they are to you. They want to stop competing with invisible fears inside their own mind. They want peace. Because this fear has cost them something significant, not just sleep or ease or happiness in the short term, but pieces of how they see themselves, pieces of their confidence, pieces of the self-assurance they had before love made them this exposed and this vulnerable. There are nights when they look at themselves and wonder what is missing, why they feel replaceable. What it is about them that seems insufficient to hold your whole heart without competition or erosion. These thoughts are doing slow, serious damage to the way they understand their own worth. And still, from underneath all of that darkness, their heart keeps reaching toward you. That reaching never stops. No matter how afraid they become, no matter how deep the exhaustion runs, some part of them is always reaching in your direction. That is the painful and beautiful truth of where they are right now. No amount of time alone will fix this. Their soul is not asking for patience. It is asking for presence, for honesty, for the kind of love that feels deliberate and safe rather than uncertain and conditional, for softness when they cannot ask for it directly, for a moment where they do not have to wonder, where the question of whether they still matter to you is answered without them having to form the words to ask it. Right now they are standing in the exact space between hope and heartbreak. One part of them still holds on to the belief that you love them, that what you built together is real and solid and worth protecting. The other part fears that you are quietly, without drama or announcement, slipping away from them toward something or someone they cannot name or compete with. That interior battle is exhausting in a way that nothing from the outside can see or fully understand. Depression does not always come with a visible face. Sometimes it looks like the friend who shows up, who laughs at the right moments, who answers messages and carries on. Sometimes it looks like silence and small withdrawals. Sometimes it looks like a person who is managing everything on the surface while something essential inside them is diminishing at a rate that frightens them in their most honest moments. That is exactly what is happening to the person who loves you. They are managing on the outside. They are falling apart somewhere you have not looked. What they need from you is not grand or complicated. They do not need a performance or a declaration. They need to feel that you see them, that you have noticed what they have not been able to say, that you are choosing them consciously and not simply tolerating their presence while your heart has already begun to move elsewhere. A single real conversation, honest and unhurried, could do more for them right now than you might imagine possible. A moment of genuine reassurance, offered freely and without prompting, could pull them back from the edge of an emotional darkness they have been standing at far too long. Because what they are truly fighting for, underneath every fear and every sleepless night and every silent tear, is simply the love they found in you. And they are terrified of losing it before they ever had the chance to say how much it meant to them. They are praying that you notice before it becomes too late to reach them.